Homeostasis. An organism may be thought of as a complex system of chemical processes. These processes are self-regulating and tend to maintain the steady state within an external environment which is liable to change. The ability to maintain a steady state within a constantly changing environment is essential for the survival of living systems. In order to maintain these conditions, organisms from the simplest to the most complex have developed a variety of structural, physiological, and behavioral mechanisms designed to achieve the same end, that is, the prevention of the constant internal environment. The maintenance of a constant internal environment, is called homeostasis. The advantage of the constant internal environment was the first pointed out by the French physiologist Claude Bernard in 1857. Throughout his research, he had been impressed by the way in which the organisms were able to regulate physiological conditions such as the body temperature and water content, maintaining them within the fairly narrow limits. These concepts of the self-regulation leading to the psychological stability was summed up by the Bernard in the now classic statements. The constancy of the internal environment is the conditions of the free life. The Bernard went on to distinguish between the external environment in which the organisms live and the internal environment in which individual cells live. In mammals, this is the tissue fluid. He realized the importance of the conditions in the latter being kept stable. For example, the mammals are capable of maintaining a constant body temperature despite changes in the external temperatures. If it is too cold, the mammals may move to warmer or more sheltered conditions. If this is not possible, self-regulating mechanisms operate to raise the body temperatures and prevent further heat loss. All metabolic systems operate most efficiently if maintained within the narrow limits close to the optimum conditions. So the organisms as a whole will function more efficiently if its cells are maintained at the optimum conditions. Homeostasis mechanisms prevent the large fluctuations from the optimum which are caused by the changes in external environment and internal environment. In 1932, the American physiologist Walter Cannon introduced the term homeostasis to describe how Bernard's constancy of the internal environment is maintained. Homeostasis mechanisms maintain the stability of the cell environment and in this way provide the organisms with a degree of independence of the environment. The more effective the mechanisms used, the most independent the organisms is of the external environment. The independence of the environment can be used as a membranes, as a measure of the success of an organism, and on this basis, more complex organisms such as the mammals and flowering plants are seen as successful since they are able to maintain the relatively constant levels of activity despite fluctuations in the environmental conditions. Such organisms are sometimes referred as regulators, maintaining that they can regulate their own internal environment. They can typically exploit a wider range of environment and habitats than the non-regulators, which tends to be confined to environments which are more stable, such as oceans or lakes. Examples of the non-regulators are the cnidarians and algae, such as seaweeds and phytoplanktons. In order to achieve the stability, the activities of the organisms need to be regulated at all levels of the biological organizations, from the molecular level to the level of the populations. This means that the organisms that must use a range of structural, biochemical, psychological, physiological, and behavioral mechanisms. In all these respects, the mammals are better equipped than the simple animals like cnidarians to cope with the changes in the internal environmental conditions. The mechanisms of the regulation found in the living organisms have many features in common with the mechanisms of the regulation used in the non-living systems such as the machines. The systems of the both organisms and machines achieve stability by some form of control. In 1948, the Vienna introduced the term cybernetics to mean the science of the control mechanisms. This science is also commonly referred as the control theory. Plant and animal physiologists have used many of very precise mathematical models of control theory to explain the functioning of biological control systems. Before studying some of the self-regulating mechanisms of the living organisms, such as body temperature regulation and the blood sugar levels, it is successfully useful to have some understanding of the principles underlying control in the environmental systems.